Thank you, folks, for joining us this evening in Israel times. I'm not sure where you're all from, but I'll take it that, here.
Oh, here we go.
Are joining us.
Cali.
Yep. So it's great to have you with us here for our second conversation, especially for Masa Tech candidates. We started about 3 weeks ago with Startup Nation Central, giving us an overview of the Israeli ecosystem. And now we're diving deep in with Agam. Agam is a application team leader, right? Is that correct? At Armis, which is a cyber company, and you'll elaborate more about what your company does. I will say, like I said previously, this Zoom conversation is to hear from Agam and his experience. If you have any question regarding the logistics or anything else that has to do with Masa Tech, feel free to message me. You should all have my email. You can also write me privately here at the chat. But I don't want to take from Agam's time and from your time because this conversation is dedicated to learn about the differences between Israelis and other people when it comes to work culture and what to expect when, God willing, you'll be here soon. And I'll say, because I'm sure that you all have this huge question mark above your heads, we are still waiting for the final approval to open registration for the program. Hopefully, you'll all be able to come here by mid-October. Once we have more information, we'll share it with you. We're not holding anything for ourselves. So please stay tuned for more updates and information from us. And without further ado, Agam, the mic is yours. I'll mute myself now. If you can all do so as well, that would be great. Yeah, Agam, please, bevakasha, as we say in Hebrew.
Cool. So good evening, good morning, whatever time zone you're in. One quick warning, I'm going to reach out and ask you a bunch of questions while I go through this. So I have sort of my presentation laid out in dead tree format for myself, but since I've been on too many Zooms today, I know how very uncomfortable it gets and, to be frank, boring unless I'm asked questions. So I'm just going to do this quite often. I'll start with an introduction. My name is Agam. I'm 32. I live in Tel Aviv. I'm married to my wife Yasmin, and we have one son, 2 years old. And I've been in tech for about 20 years now. So 20 years is a long time. First question off the bat: what have you been doing for 20 years? Let's do this randomly. Maxim, what is something you've been doing for 20 years?
Try to understand what I need to do.
Okay, I mean, that's a good one. To be like very frank, I wish you to keep doing that for at least 20 more years, if not for the rest of your life. I feel like it's a very good journey to be on, and hopefully you can do a much larger part of that journey here in Israel. I started coding when I was 12. I served in the Israeli military intelligence in a technical unit, doing all sorts of computer stuff. Then I studied at Hebrew U, and got my degree in computer science and Middle Eastern studies. And I've since been working in startups in Tel Aviv. And my most recent job is I work for a company called Armis. All the companies that I worked for sold only in the United States, and all the companies that I worked for had teams in the United States. And so that has been sort of a constant mark in my career of working in a company that has an R&D office in Israel and people working globally and mostly in the United States. A lot of the examples and sort of comparisons I'll be making are with the United States. Just from the names, it seems like most of you aren't in the United States. Am I missing? Did I get this wrong? I'm assuming Melanie Roskin is, or at least in North America, but for the rest of you, not really. So we'll make this work. There we go.
I'm from Argentina.
Argentina, okay. My bad, I apologize.
I'm from Sweden.
Okay, there we go. So nobody, great. All my examples are just useless. This is gonna be very fun. But just with a show of hands, who here has worked with Americans? We can all shit on them during this conversation. There we go. Okay, yeah. So raising my hands both for working with them and for hating them. And with that being said, I'll say that like I'm a huge fan of the tech industry in Israel for two reasons. One is I think it's a really fun place to be in. But more importantly than that, I think it's a really great place to be in because of the way it treats its employees. And this is sort of going to be main focal point of what I want to talk about in terms of like what a workplace environment expects from you, and also what you can expect from people to sort of the way they treat you and how they're going to decipher your actions. So I'm going to start with sort of a question to you guys, and assuming you're not Americans and don't know the answer to this, let's say you wake up in the morning, and this is way before Corona, you're going on your commute to work. You get on whatever public transport, and there's somebody sitting next to you, either on the bus or the train or whatever public transportation method you're using. That person next to you, and this is sort of the generic person, right? 5 days a week, maybe 5 different people. How much in common do you have with them, percentage-wise, right? Like how much do you assume you're going to have in common with this random person on the public transport? Let's start with Fabian.
Not that much.
Nothing much. Rodrigo?
10%.
10%, okay.
Yeah, hate for the Argentinian government and maybe football, and that's it. Like,
and that's it. So hate for the Argentine government and football. I think
like 50% maybe.
I think in Brazil you'll also find hate for the Argentine government. So even if you travel to Brazil, you're gonna have that in common with the person.
Yeah,
but
we have that in common.
It's gonna work great. Something that is very common around Israelis in general, Israeli culture, is that when Israelis spend the majority of their lives stepping onto public transportation or into random rooms and assuming everybody in the room has a lot in common with them, starting with how their family deals, what their career path looked like, where they grew up, and what that school looked like. Everything is very, very similar. And so this is sort of a foundational difference in how you approach a group of people that are essentially strangers to you. In the United States, and again, like I'm saying, I'm going to ask on the work cultures of where you're coming from, it's very common when you come to a workplace to assume that your relationship is only going to be about around work, and whatever happens at home, that's your own business and none of my business, and definitely not something that I'm going to be taking part of. Marina, you were saying that you are coming from North America. Can you vouch for these claims of mine? Would you say that that's an accurate statement? Wait, you're muted, so let's take care of that. There we go.
So I'm 100% with you on this one. I think it is totally how it is like. In fact, if you start talking about personal issues, you might be ostracized.
Yep.
Yeah.
We'll get to that in a second. Let's just get somebody else on this. Kali Masro. How does it work where you're working? What's the work culture in terms of like feeling out other people's lives beyond work? Kali. Silent
It's
one.
mute.
Let's try somebody else in the meantime. Let's go to Jonathan. Oh, okay. Here we go. Mic problems. Or Jonathan. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Yeah, it's Jonathan. How the work culture is? Well, in Sweden generally, people are very, keep to themselves. They're not very social. So it's, you mind your own business and you make small talk perhaps, but it's not much more than that.
Okay. So, I mean, it seems like you've all been to Israel or had some experience with Israelis, and this isn't like completely foreign to you, but I want to take this sort of to the next level and just like go how like show you how far this can go and like how deep this can go. So the example I like giving and explaining like this very basic notion is with a test scenario, and let's go around and see like if you all fit the bill. Let's say you show up late to work. You're like 2 hours late to work. Like you've told your boss, I'm going to be late. It's fine. It's not, you haven't missed anything important, but you're late. And a coworker of yours that didn't know you're going to be late asks you, hey, why were you late? What gives? Like what made you be late? In some cultures, that's already sort of transgressing and going too far. But let's say you've been asked this question, and let's say you know the reason you were late is because you had a doctor's appointment. What are the odds that you will share the fact that you had a doctor's appointment? And I see Ed smiling, and it's gonna go crazy. Like you're gonna see just like in a few minutes how deep this goes. What are the odds you're gonna share with this random coworker of yours that this was a doctor's appointment that made you late? Callie, did you get your mic problems suited out yet? If yes, just barge right in. But in the meantime, we're gonna go to Fabian.
So if it is my coworker, I think I have established a relationship before. But if I have never talked with him about anything, like he's just a random person or a random coworker, I don't think I will share that. If it is like my coworker outside of me or something like that.
It seems weird to you.
What?
It seems weird to you to share that it was a doctor's appointment that you were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it is an unknown person, I don't know, maybe. But if it is a coworker, I think I have established a relationship before that.
Okay. Let's say that they said they were at a doctor's appointment. What's your next move?
What happened to you?
So what happened to you?
Are you okay? Are you okay?
Are you okay?
Like,
Are you okay? Is pretty
Yeah.
good. Does anybody have a different answer, a different question? Because the question that's asked in Israel, when I'm going to say it, I'm assuming you're just going to be like, well, this is very strange.
Can I help you? I
Yeah, go
mean,
ahead.
I can answer to my
ahead.
coworker.
So let's say the coworker says this was a doctor's appointment. What's your next question?
Yes. My next question is, can I help you? Do you need some help? Do you need something like that?
That's great. So my next question would be, what doctor?
mhm.
Just be straight up, what doctor? Like, and even this isn't going as far in. So let's say you came to the office, you had a doctor's appointment. For whatever reasons, you've established a relationship. You said I was at the doctor, and then this coworker of yours looks at you and like straight face, like just like gut reaction says, what doctor? Like you're all like very strange. Let's say they didn't ask you what doctor. Would you have an emotional reaction to them not asking what doctor? Or is that fair game? Tobias, can you barge in? I know you were late, but like I feel like you already kind of know what the scenario we're walking through here.
Sure. I mean, I don't think I would mind if they didn't ask me about whether I'm feeling fine or not. I mean, I guess it depends. Probably I wouldn't. This is like when they're at work. We're not there necessarily to make friends, although I do care about my coworkers. But maybe it's not the first thing in their mind. Maybe they have something else going on. Like, it's not always about me.
Yeah. So if I come to work and I'm late and people ask me why I'm late and I say that I was at the doctor and they don't ask me what doctor it is, I'll take offense. I'll take it as a sign that they don't care about me. I'll see that as sort of a signal that they're like, this guy isn't important, or I'm okay with him being sick. This is not man or ritual and sort of people going through it automatically. This is very straight social signaling and what's expected of you. And if you don't ask them what doctor, they're like, okay, wait, they still don't get the rules here. And if they ask you what doctor, the reason they're doing it is because they care about you. This is their actual reasoning. It's a very sort of ingrained thing. And when you tell this to Israelis, they're surprised. Like, you know what, that makes perfect sense. I would be very mad if I came into the office and told people that I'm sick or that I went to the doctor and they didn't ask me what doctor, and they didn't like really want to make sure that they got all the details. So Maxima was saying what happened to you is similar, but at the same time is sort of trying to go on neutral ground and not really infringe on somebody's privacy. And this is sort of at the heart of how much do I have in common with this person? And I'm assuming it's okay for me to know this information. This is totally my business. It's 100% something that I'm entitled to know. And there shouldn't be, it's not only that there's no problem with me knowing it, it's that if I don't ask this, it's almost offensive. It shows that I don't care. Okay, I see the nods. So I'm going to move into sort of the next example. Who here in the last week have challenged their manager on something? Came forward and said, I think you're wrong, or I think you're missing a point. Show of hands, or one, Rodrigo, two, Fabian. Cool. Let's go to Rodrigo. Is this a common occurrence, or is this sort of an exemption?
No, it's really common. The company I developed for, the CTO, it's kind of old guy, an old CTO, so every tech he knows, it's like really old, so I'm constantly telling him that no, we have to do it the new way, the microservices way.
Does it come easily to you? Is this something that you're sort of accustomed to, or?
No, yes. Well, when he entered, no. I have been in the company longer than him. He entered like a year ago, and I have been here for 2 years. And At the start, no, but he's an Irish, so it's easy to talk to. He's more open.
So he's more open, but in a different company,
Yeah.
it wouldn't go across so
No,
well. And it's
that
definitely
wouldn't
like
fly.
this is like a special situation you're in, and that you
Yeah,
feel like, okay. Let me ask this in a different angle. Who here in the last week has been challenged by a coworker of theirs? Like straight up in front of 16 people, you say something, somebody else comes forward and says, I think you're wrong. 0. Okay, last one. Who here had a subordinate of theirs that they had to sort of call out and say, I think you're doing X and X wrong. And this is, and I'm not talking about sort of part of a performance review, but just like normal day-to-day business. Something comes up and you need to tell you, listen, like this was not the right thing to do. I think you're mistaken here. Also 0. Okay. Who here can remember a week in the last 3 years of your lives where all 3 have happened? Oh, there we go. Okay. That sounds like a pretty shitty week, Marina.
Yeah, life, you know.
Okay. But there's like one, it was like, it just happened once. Like it's this like specific week.
Yeah.
Okay. I will make the argument that in Israel, these things happen on a daily basis. And again, it's the flip side. It's the remote. Challenging, calling into question, raising questions, saying, wait, I think we need to rethink this. Not only are there regular hapstances, they're also signals of interest and engagement. They're
Exactly.
not
Rather than leaving some, yeah.
So it seems like you agree with this like approach, but I'm just saying like it's
Otherwise,
so common.
life is boring because otherwise, oh yeah, everything is good, and then you finish a product and oh well, it's shit. Well, where was I? Like, what, you know? So.
So I mean, from a choice of what culture you want to live in, I 100% agree, and this is also why I choose to live here. 100%, we're on the same page. What I want to say is when you're working with Israelis, you kind of need to expect this because it's so common and so prevalent that somebody's going to ask a question, raise a challenge, say, wait, I think we're missing something. I don't understand something. This doesn't, these two things don't match up, is that it can also be almost be a shock when you're not used to it. I remember like there's an experience a lot of Israelis go through and they're sort of very familiar with it, is when you travel abroad and you come back, usually we take connection flights. So on the first flight, you're still on a flight without Israelis. Once you land at the airport, the first line you stand in with other Israelis in the line, you know it's that the line has Israelis when they start to sort of ask questions and argue with the security guards and say, wait, I don't want this to work this way. Maybe you should run the line a different way. In a work environment, this is exacerbated tenfold over because people see this as a way of showing that they're engaged. And it's also the flip side. As a manager, I expect my employees to do this. One of my employees, he's a great guy. He's a very strong developer. I really enjoy working with him. Just today, I was speaking both to him and to another manager of his, saying the one thing he needs to learn is to ask more questions and state his opinion more. Otherwise, we don't really know he's engaged. This is genuinely a concern of ours and genuinely something that we struggle with, and we're trying to teach him. So even though he's apt, he's good, he's strong, he comes on time, he gets his job done, he helps other people when asked, all those things are great. But if we're sitting in a room and there's 5 of us and we're working on something and he has a question, he'll wait with that question until it's absolutely the last minute. And just culture-wise, it doesn't mesh well with how we're working. It's definitely something to be expected while working with Israelis, is that they're going to ask questions. After establishing that, I want to take this one step further. If you think somebody's job is terrible, they did a terrible job of something, what are the chances you're going to tell them this? So I'm going to go to some of our new people who joined in. Ben Dryden.
Hey. I would probably not tell them.
Okay, great. That was a very straightforward answer. Anybody else here disagree or see highly likely that they're going to tell them?
If I see that that will bring me some problems, some issues, or some issues to my company, so I'll try to raise this question maybe only with this person or maybe with some other. Something
Okay, cool.
I would check if there's a pattern of this before I make any assumptions. So has this person done a good job before and suddenly stopped doing a good job, and then maybe talk to the person first before?
So there are 2 things to this. One is sort of generic tech saying of speak about the code or the work and not about the person. And this is extremely common in Israeli culture where you say, this work was terrible. This doesn't mean you're a terrible person or you're not very good. It's not attacking you personally. I'm just talking about your work. And this is a statement that can be said in Hebrew all the time. And in Hebrew, it's saying, like I can totally imagine myself saying that 15 times a day, not even noticing. And in English, it just doesn't come over as well. In English, it sounds like I'm attacking the person and who they are to their core. But the second aspect of this is going back to what we were discussing about the doctor. The ultimate sin in Israeli society, in the Israeli workplace, is hypocrisy. Telling somebody, listen, this work is okay, when it's not, is the ultimate social sin. It is the worst possible thing you can do to somebody and is the ultimate sort of insult. If you want to make if you absolutely 100% dislike somebody, you're just not going to talk to them about the quality of their work. And on the flip side of this, the ultimate friendship thing to do is to call somebody out in a way that's comfortable to them, but say, listen, you're not performing well. This is not a good job. I know you can do better. That is sort of a very high sign of friendship. And also not only of friendship that's already established, but also of a way of building trust. It is genuinely a way of building trust, showing somebody I can see your imperfections. I can see the things where you're not performing well and what you're not doing well. And here's where you're missing, and I think you can do better. Let's call out some of the new people again. I see Amber. Can you conjure a time when somebody was extremely direct in the last month or so in your workplace? Sorry, I muted you. There we go.
Hi. Yeah, like I was working with a group and I wasn't doing some work and I completely forgot about it, and somebody told me directly that somebody just directly told me that I didn't do the work well, so it's fine.
Okay, can we be, I'm looking for, and this was just one-on-one, right? This was not like a larger group setting or?
Yeah, it was in a group setting, but.
It wasn't a group setting?
Yeah.
And this was, would you say this is sort of a common occurrence or something that sort of is often happens or like on a weekly thing?
It depends on the group and it depends with what kind of people you're working with.
Okay, so you could imagine
the group I was with was quite international, so yeah.
Okay. I was looking for an example that's more broad setting and not sort of narrowed on a specific task.
I don't know, sorry.
No, that's fine, that's fine. And it's okay, it's also okay if your response to my question is, for example, that's kind of what I was getting at and something I was trying to sort of raise as an issue. I'm gonna tell you of sort of what happened literally today at work for me. So we've been working remotely for a while now. I'm part of a group of developers. There's 18 of us. We're notorious in the company for sort of how tight-knit we are socially, how close we are, how we're constantly sort of in each other's lives. We know what's going on. And it's been hard. It's been hard for us socially being sort of distant. And one of the things we sort of raised as an option today was to have a picnic where we can still be socially distanced, but we can at least meet, see each other, talk to each other, catch up on what's going on in each other's lives, not through Zoom. And one of the guys sort of suggested and said, you know what, like I live in a moshav. We have a huge backyard here. We can host everybody here. There's more than enough space. I have picnic tables. We can barbecue. It was great. And before he could finish his sentence, somebody else said, listen, you live on the outskirts of Gaza. I don't want to show up there because there's going to be rocket fire over your house. And this was just like straight up, no question, like no waiting for the right moment to mention this, not saying I feel uncomfortable with this, just like in front, in the middle of discussion. And the reason I'm bringing this up isn't because I think it's like the wrong thing to say or that it's very direct or whatever, is because this type of interaction between these two people happens all the time. The interaction where the person from around Gaza says something about his house and the other person remarks and says, listen, you're constantly under rocket fire. And that's part of conversation in the workplace. Your personal life, how it impacts our work decisions and the things that we need to bring forward. One of the things that I'm mocked for on a daily basis on every Zoom call is how terrible the internet is at my home. Before Corona hit and we worked socially distanced, one of the things that constantly came up was the guy who has to leave early because he has kids and needs to go take care of them. Now this guy is a workhorse. He constantly gets things done. He's always on time. It's not an issue of whether he delivers what he's expected to deliver, but it's just constantly pinning and marking and talking about that one thing that differs him from the rest of us and bringing it forward. In many other cultural contexts, that would seem extremely rude. In Israel, again, this is used as a way to build social capital, to build trust, to show that we're sort of part of each other, working together. Next question. I'm going to go to Ro'i, just because you have the same name as the guy who sat next to me throughout my military service, also named Ro'i Tal, and ask for you to tell us about the last time you had a 3-hour argument with somebody at your work.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, so there was a guy at work who I've been working with for about 2 years now, and this guy has always been very direct. And at the beginning, it was very hard for me to really get along with him because, you know, he's been there for longer than I have, and whenever he wanted something done, he wanted it done his way. But after a bit of time, I sort of, well, didn't really like the way he did everything, and I would often argue with him on certain things. And I have had quite a few arguments with him where I wanted it done my way and he wanted it done his way, and that was a pretty regular thing for us. But I think towards the end we sort of got along because we sort of just started to see each other's perspective, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. Would you say these arguments were something that you enjoyed, or did he enjoy? Were they positive encounters?
I'm pretty sure he enjoyed it, but I can't say I feel the same way. At least not at the beginning. But I think after a while I got used to it.
Okay, with him personally.
With him, yeah, with him personally.
And if there was an argument with somebody else in the office, again, back to like not a fun experience.
No, not at all.
Not at all. Okay, so the metaphor I want you to think of when arguing with an Israeli, especially in the workplace, is like wrestling in the mud with a pig. After 3 hours, you're sweaty, you're tired, you're exhausted, you're full of dirt, you've been wrestling in this, and you're just spent, and you're ready to go home and forget about this. And that's the moment when you look at the pig and you realize he's been having fun. He's been enjoying this. Coming to argue is almost a sport, and a good argument can leave people relieved. It can leave them, I don't want to say energized, but it can definitely leave them with this feeling of elation of like, I got some work done today. I managed to finally pound this conversation through. Whether we got to sort of an agreement or not, it doesn't really matter. Just the sheer experience of throwing arguments back and forth, of trying to sharpen each other's minds, of trying to understand the idea from different angles is very deeply ingrained in Israeli culture. Due to this being a Masa thing, I'm assuming everybody here is Jewish to an extent. My question to you is, would you agree that this idea of argument or discussion as a way of reaching the truth is a central tenet in Judaism? Just feel free to barge right in. Yeah, there we go. I see a lot of head nods. So here you go. This is something we all have in common. Back to sort of the first thing I said in this talk. Israelis don't really distinguish this trait from Jewish life to every other part of their life. It's just something they do. They're so used to it. Everybody around them does it all the time. When we go to Passover dinner and we're told, now's your time to ask questions, we're not surprised. Like, this isn't a unique day of the year. This is every day of my life. I'm constantly asking questions. This goes back to the point that I was making of challenging your director, challenging your subordinates, challenging your coworkers. It's so deeply part of who we are that we've learned to enjoy it. Otherwise, we wouldn't survive. Going back to you, Roy, and the story you told, the fact that you have one coworker that you're constantly in arguments with, I would like to argue that if you come and work in an Israeli environment, you're going to have all of your coworkers in this way. Some of them are going to be more shy, less shy, but even the shy ones, in comparison, sort of the benchmark of what you're used to, they're going to be very comfortable taking you on, like full 2 hours on, with whatever topic you're going to bring forward, and they're not going to break a sweat. They're going to enjoy it. They're going to say, "This has been part of my work." So you see Elle nodding, and this is sort of she's like, realizing that it doesn't have to be this way, that maybe someday you can come to work and people will just be nice to you and it'll be fine. As an Israeli,
environment, come to Canada and live here and see how it's like, and then we talk again. And that sometimes I call my mom just to have a fight, and we know it's very difficult to explain to coworkers that we're not fighting like ooh, forever. It's just for the sport, to raise the voice, raise the blood pressure, and so on and so forth. So yeah.
I've been nodding for the past 30 minutes. I think my neck is about to break because you're absolutely right in everything that you've said so far.
The one point of arguing I find is what's important to stress isn't that it's an extreme version of what you know. It's just that everybody is this way. Every single person is this way. Even the shy introverts are this way. And it's not because they want it their way, like Ben said, and sort of characterized his coworker. It's just because this is what we're trained to do socially. We're constantly, 100% of the time, challenged by our peers and expected to challenge them back. Even when we're not entirely sure of ourselves. And it's just a flat out instinct when you show at work that this is something you're going to do. Cool, I see a bunch of nods. I'm hoping when you get into your third argument, you're not gonna say, you know what, this is what I signed up for, I'm gonna go back. Like, this is not the experience I want you to have. What I'm wishing you is that you embrace this and see this as sort of a token and an invitation. And speaking of invitations, I'm gonna step into the next sort of stigma or stereotype about Israelis. First, I'm gonna go back to a question to the group. Let's go to Melanie this time. When was the last time you either invited or were invited by a coworker to an event outside of work that wasn't happy hour?
The last year, I think, because we are in quarantine since March.
Fair. So
but
let's say I asked this question on March 1st.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat?
Let's say I asked the question like in times before quarantine. When were you invited by a coworker, or how often would you be invited by a coworker, or would you invite them to an event in your life?
A lot of times.
A lot of times, it's common. It's not something you're surprised by.
No, every week, I think.
Every week, and this is to have a beer together, or is this something that's happening in their life that they're also inviting you?
No, it's happening.
It's happening. Okay. This is not the answer I was expecting. So, does anybody have a different answer for me so that I can make my point? Marina, go ahead.
I've worked with someone for several months, and then we kind of started talking, but we never even I've never even been to her house, or she's never been to my house. I've invited her, but it's kind of like it's a different culture. It's a different environment in Canada. Okay. I don't know about other places.
In Israel, the polite thing to do when you're running an event is to basically invite all of your coworkers. When I got married, I literally printed out an invitation for the wedding, hung it up on the door to the office, and said, everybody's invited. Please let me know you're coming. And this is a company of 25. This was the polite thing to do. Nobody batted an eye. And I've been to many, many weddings that I've been invited to this way. To drive home how often this happens is to tell you the story of how I've heard this is done in Saudi Arabia. I've had a friend who's lived in Saudi Arabia. I'm going to tell this, Yael is going to respond to this and say, this is genius. And I think like the fact that Israelis reacted this with, this is genius, really shows how this works. In Saudi Arabia, you invite everybody to your wedding, but you're actually invited only if you're invited twice. And so the reason the system is genius is because it allows you to invite everybody. You meet somebody, say, hey, I'm getting married, you're invited to my wedding. And it allows them to say, hey, that's great. And with both of you to save face, and you don't need to sort of hold this back. In Israel, when you invite somebody to your wedding, you're expecting them to show up. And if they don't show up, they're an asshole. This is not something nice that they've done. They've crossed a line. They can say they're not coming, but then they sort of need to apologize. They need to have a really great reason. One of sort of the very common rants you can find amongst friends, and definitely amongst my friend group, is I've been invited to this wedding. I really don't want to go. I don't like the guy. I don't like the people there. I really don't go. I don't have a good excuse of how to get out of this. And I'd say 5 out of 10 times, I'll end up showing up at the wedding, not having a good time and leaving just because this is what's expected of me socially. Cool. When was the last time you were invited to an event, you knew you didn't want to go, the person inviting you knew that they don't want to invite you, but you still went and it was all good? Nothing. It shakes of the heads. All the people that are silent and without videos, anybody here has experienced something even remotely similar to this?
I just don't want to take over the whole conversation. That's why I'm silent. But,
Okay.
yeah.
No, but I'm referring to the people without the video. So I'm curious if you guys want to jump in and sort of interject with a story of yours that's going to completely counter my point. Melanie, I'm calling you out as you sort of completely blew me out of the water with your answer. Yeah. Okay. Weddings are a huge sort of work-related event, and especially in sort of my age group, so I'm 32. What I've been told is that this is subbed in 5 to 6 years with bris, and then later on with bar mitzvahs of children, and then later on with weddings of children. And it's just a constant, non-stop environment of being invited to events of people in your workplace. And the larger the company, the more opportunities that you have for these events, the more people you're exposed to, and the more often you are invited and expected to show up at these events. A very extreme example of this is a woman that joined my company 4 months ago, got married a week after she joined, right? So her wedding date was a week after joining, and a lot of people were still invited to that wedding, and were still expected to show up, and it was part of sort of building those relationships. Again, I can sort of, I can see Yael nodding and saying this is one thing. I'm gonna end.
100%.
Yeah, I'm gonna end and then sort of open it up to questions and what you've heard and all that with my last metaphor, and say that I feel the best way to explain Israelis to non-Israelis is to say that Israelis treat strangers like a lot of people around the world treat their family. And this is both in a positive sense in terms of sticking your neck out for them, assuming benevolence, wanting to help them out, being there for them even in extreme situations, pulling out all the stops and helping them, but also in all of the very negative things, such as I'm going to cut in line because I don't really think you deserve to be in line for me, just like I'll cut in line for my brother. I'm going to eat out of your plate, not because I don't have manners, but because literally this is fine, this is okay, I'm okay with this. I will criticize what you're wearing, where you're going, your life choices, even if I've only met you for 10 minutes. And I see this as something that's completely legitimate. And once you sort of accept this as a thinking model, you can kind of anticipate what Israelis are going to do. And I think that this is sort of, if I need to give one short answer as to what to expect when working with Israelis, I'd say expect to work in a place full of your brothers and sisters. Cool. I feel like I've been speaking for too long, so I'm going to open to questions and examples or whatever. Shoot at me, whatever you want.
Maybe,
Sorry, okay, so
Yeah.
ostensibly there should be a feature of raising your hand, and then I'll call you out. I think that'll work great. Alina, go ahead, and then Thomas will be afterwards.
So what is the tech interview like? What is the process like? Because here it's 4 weeks or a month, and there's several different stages. And I'm just curious, what is...
So it definitely differs between companies. One thing I'll say about interviews in Israel, and I find that they're not, like, this is definitely a bias and something that I wish we were better at, is that the number one factor for hiring or dishiring are recommendations. Number one, I cannot stress this enough. And for this reason, I would like to encourage every single one of you to start building your professional network in Israel now. I cannot emphasize how important this is. Any type of personal recommendation trumps basically anything else, especially if this is somebody you've worked with in the past. So any Israeli that you've worked with in the past, I would reach out to them now and say, I'm coming to Israel. I'm going to need your help with recommendations. This is something that I'm going to need. I don't need to make this preparation work because I've lived through my entire life and worked with enough people that at the drop of a hat, I can get a recommendation. And if you're moving here, this is something that you need to prepare yourself for. Again, you're stepping into interview. What you're expecting is an interview where the interviewer is working very, very hard to overcome their biases in terms of, this is a person I don't know, it doesn't matter, I'm just going to judge them for their skill level. The interviewer is stepping into the room and saying, I'm going to speak with this person, and once I'm going to step out, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to call my buddy who knows them. And if I don't have a buddy, like, you know what, maybe this isn't worth it. So that's sort of my general answer. A more technical thing is, I'd say interviews are more like, the way you experience them are more or less the same. One thing I'd like to encourage you to consider and think about is whether you want to interview in Hebrew or in English. I've spent 5 years working with the bootcamp run by the Jewish Agency, coding bootcamp run by the Jewish Agency for Olim. And in basically all the meetings, I encourage people to say, interview in English. Even if you feel like you're very strong in Hebrew, it's better for you to speak in English. You're going to feel more comfortable. Interview is a complicated situation. Regardless, don't stress about the Hebrew. A workplace that wants to know if you speak Hebrew will check for that specifically, and they won't do it throughout an interview. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Cool. Thomas.
Yeah, I was going to ask about, well, it was kind of, I was kind of answering, I was also going to ask about like, what are like more important or less important factors in like applications compared to like other countries in Israel, like what things are gauged, whether it is more experience, recommendations, and stuff like that. So, thank you.
So yeah, so on sort of comparing experience and recommendations, the problem with experience that doesn't come with a recommendation is that it doesn't really mean anything. And a lot of different experiences can be very different from one another, even if they're different amounts of years, right? Somebody who can be working for 3 years can be a very, 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 very strong candidate. And the only way I know that is somebody recommended him. And because of the way the tech industry here has been built around military experience, it's very often that I'll have candidates that have been personally referred to me, or I already personally know them. There are some software engineers at the age of 22 who have already worked with upwards of 150 engineers, right? Like that's just not something you'll find in many other places. And so this is sort of what skews this skill level ladder comparison.
I think Ben raised his hand before, right?
Yeah, but my question was answered.
So, I mean, similar to Thomas, if you ask it, maybe I'll have something else to sort of add in on it.
Okay, sure. I was gonna ask about cutting in lines. Like when I was in Israel, I noticed that's actually very frequent. Even I guess if you don't know the person, can you just tell me a bit about that etiquette?
I mean, it kind of depends where. I think now with coronavirus, it doesn't happen as often just because people don't want to be physically close to one another. I've definitely seen lines. In Hebrew, we say "komo bechul," which translates into "like abroad." And I look at it and I was like, "Whoa, this is very strange." Like I'm used to seeing these lines when I travel abroad and not here. I think part of it is just this sort of deep belief all together. I don't really think you're deserving of this being in this line more than I do. And because we're sort of on a level playing field, it's okay if I need to sort of deconstruct why people feel comfortable doing this. Anything else? Feel free to ask anything about the tech sector, about working in it, any type of position.
I actually have a question, Agam. You sort of touched this early in the conversation, but I wanted to hear what you have to say about the hierarchy in tech companies here in Israel. Is it more flat than other countries, or is it similar to other places that you know?
So it kind of depends what company. My experience has been in the military and in startups that were less than 200 employees. So my experience is skewed, and take that into account what I'm saying. Even in the military, in technical units, it's extremely common for people to challenge decisions and call out on ideas or opinions of their managers and their managers' managers and their managers' managers, even in front of groups, even in a crowd setting. Israelis are much more, and Israeli culture is much more geared towards delivery rather than showing that you've accomplished something. And the way I think this can be exemplified is by mentioning the ultimate insult in a military setting, which translates into sort of civilian life. So in Hebrew we say lenatsnetz. Lenatsnetz is the worst thing you can say about somebody that served with you in the military. Lenatsnetz literally means to blink on and off. So if you can imagine a light sort of going on and off, on and off, on and off. And somebody who's a snitch, somebody who's sort of this blinker that goes on and off, is the person that's working while the managers are looking and not working while the managers are not looking. And if somebody does this, that's the worst insult, both towards a colleague, towards an employee, towards somebody in a different department. And if you think of this if you think of the insult as an indicator of the way the culture is structured, is you'd agree that Israelis are looking for people who deliver, not necessarily show that they deliver. And the downside of this is that often Israelis will completely overlook how their work looks like on the outside. And they'll say, listen, this does the job. Yes, but it's ugly, it can't sell, it doesn't reproduce, it's not documented, I don't have the docs, this has spelling mistakes. And Israelis, yes, but it works. It does what you asked me to do. There's this piece that goes around online, I'm sure some of you have read it, of if you give 5 Americans the job of building a banana peeler and 5 Israelis to build a banana peeler, the Israelis will come with a machine the next morning that kind of works. It peels 80% of bananas, and the rest of the 20% it kind of completely destroys. It also works on sort of an old engine of a tractor, and it's already built, they have a prototype. But then again, it has all these problems. And if you give it to Americans, they'll spend 5 months, it peels 100% of bananas and can be developed, but it took them those 5 months. And this is sort of, if you Google this, you'll 100% find the story online. And I think like that one story really sort of talks about the difference in culture. In startup culture, there's a lot of similarities between sort of the heroes of startups, where scrappy, lean, build this now, get it done, fit with the narrative that I described with Israeli culture. I want to talk about the downsides of this, and this is something that I think a lot of Golim have a huge leg up on Israelis, is that Israelis don't understand that oftentimes the 10% work at the end is what actually makes the difference, right? If you spend 2 weeks building a prototype and 5 years perfecting it, those 5 years are super important. They're not niceties. They're not small parts of it. And a lot of Israelis really miss out on this. They really don't understand why it's important.
I have a question. I have a question regarding, because I've worked in tech, but like, I don't know if you're familiar with it or not, but like more in the Bay Area, in San Francisco, in like the United States. And I was wondering about like similarities in the culture, like the work environments there and Israel, things that you could point out that you thought were similar.
So my older brother moved to the Bay Area 1.5 years ago, and he told me this story. And when he told it to me, I was in shock. And and both me and my older brothers can kind of hear from my English. We grew up partly in the United States, so we both speak American English. And I mean, we know the rules of baseball. We both went to literally American schools in the Midwest, and sort of we both have this like feeling of we understand the way Americans speak. And 2 months in, my brother says, listen, I come into meetings and I understand the words people are saying. I have no idea what they mean. And what he's found as the only way of getting to understand what people mean is he'll tell them, and say, listen, in my culture, where I come from, we're extremely direct. And as I really emphasize that I'm very direct. That's when they'll tell me what they mean. And he says, like, I need to like emphasize 5 or 6 times. We're very direct. That's the only time somebody says, listen, your work was shit. And when I read American newspaper clippings or articles talking about how like Bay Area culture is like cutthroat and get the job done and like let's run forward, like, and then I hear this story, I was like, it's just like it's so different than what I've imagined it to be. And so I'll stand my ground in terms of like my claim, like work culture in Israel is similar in the symbols, but very different in the day-to-day semantics. How direct people are, how expectant they are of you socially, how up in your business they're going to be in terms of what they're expecting from you, and also how much they're expecting for you to come into their world. They're expecting you to ask you, what doctor? Like, you were hurt. And you're like, I didn't even know this is something I was expected to do. That's in terms of sort of the interpersonal. In terms of how companies are run, all of the tech gods, as I call them, are the same. We all do sprints and sprint points, and we do stand-ups, and we do dailies, and we use Jira, we use Slack. Like, all those are the same. We read the same newsletters. I mean, those things are going to feel very comfortable to you if those are systems that you've used. Cool.
Thank you. Yeah, also I was going to say that makes a lot of sense because I have a close friend of mine who is from Tel Aviv, and we work together in the same company in San Francisco, and he like I'm Argentine, but like we also like get into each other's life. We're like very like we spend most of the time with people we work with. We might as well get to know them. But in the States, it's very like my own self and my professional self, very separated. Can't talk about it, and it's all smiles and everything is great. And I always found it so alienating. So it's very refreshing to hear that it'll be different over there.
So it's different. I will say that sometimes it's very tiring, and sometimes you're kind of like, get out of my business. Like this is really none of your business. Legitimate questions to be asked in the workplace: how much do you pay rent? Which medication did you take? Which medication does your wife take while she's pregnant? What baby food do you feed your son? Did you circumcise your son? This is something that I've been asked multiple times. Yeah, I can see like the eyebrows shooting up. People are like, whoa, this is not.
No, but did you? I'm kidding.
Exactly. Cool.
Yofi, do we have any last question?
I have a question. It's another question, but if you can talk about how is to work in the startup environment in Tel Aviv, like how you interact with other startups, or how you interact with how is the environment with the people in difference of working with in a I don't know, in a big tech or something.
I mean, it's great, to be honest. Like it's I'm having the time of my life. Like my wife's a physician, so she works long hours, and in the hospital, it's just like it's not like very positive environment. And at the extreme of it, one day she said like our company took us for like a fun day, like an offsite fun day, and I don't even remember what we did. We went to the beach, we had a barbecue, I don't know, it was something. And then the next day she came to my office because she had a day of research, and I was like, you know, you should show up. We have Wi-Fi and we have snacks and coffee and whatever. And at the end of that day, she said, you know what? If they ever ask me what I want for a fun day at my work, is I want to come and work for a day at your company. And all the things that like she's so excited about, I told her like, listen, this is the goal, this is the standard in tech in Tel Aviv. Working in tech in Tel Aviv is the good life. There's no, it's just the good life. There's no other better way of phrasing this. Yeah, I think this is a really great note to finish on. I'm dropping
Absolutely.
my email in the chat. Feel free to reach out to me. This is my full name. Feel free to Google me or LinkedIn me or read up on whatever old YouTube videos of mine that you can find.
Thank you so much, Agam, for your time. I will say, everybody, before you leave this conversation, that we will send you the link to the recording of this Zoom, so you can.
I want it for my brother. I want my brother to hear this Zoom meeting.
Great.
Please.
Then you'll be able to do that. And I'm reminding you now also the emails of myself, which again, you should already have it by now, and our contact people for if you come from a non-English speaking country or from an English speaking country. You have Gregory and Ilya. Feel free to email any one of us with questions regarding the program itself. And mark your calendars and look up for the invitation in the next few days for our third Zoom conversation for you. It'll be on August 25th. We'll host Shaul Olmert, who's an Israeli, one of Israel's top Agams. I see your face. Absolutely. Shaul Olmert was the founder of Playbuzz. He's a well-known Israeli entrepreneur, and he'll be talking with Inbal Orpaz. Inbal is one of the best.
She's great as well. She's fantastic.
She's amazing. She's one of Israel's experts regarding the tech ecosystem. And the two of them will be discussing the aftermath of or I don't know if we can say aftermath now, how the pandemic affects the tech ecosystem in Israel. So mark your calendars and look up for the invitation in the next few days. Agam, I'll send you the invitation as well.
Cool.
Thank you all for joining us. I apologize again for the technical issues that we had at the beginning, and have a great day.
Have a great day, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Later on.
Thanks a lot.